Well, let's go ahead and get started. I just want to say, I was, oh, by the way, does everybody know who we are? Oh, okay. I'm Gordon Harris, and this is...
My name is Cathy Harris.
And we're the directors of the School of Ministry, which if you've been in the building across the road, that's generally where we hang out. And Cathy is the intern coordinator for the church here. We actually have 30 interns on staff right now. About 10 plus are directly under our...
Love and care.
Love and care, that's the words, in the School of Ministry. So, and we rotate, usually they sort of overlap. So we have about 5 new ones every 6 months, which is a little bit different than some scenarios. I wanted to, I was going to tell you a number of scenes, but I just want to tell you one scene just as we begin. This, I don't know if this would be an everyday occurrence, but it would be the kind of thing that sometimes happens. We had an intern one time who was an amazing young man, and really had a lot of maturity, eager, nothing to really fight against with him. Just really excellent young man, and it was so excellent that we actually kept him on with us, and he became an assistant pastor with us. And but he has this characteristic, which is it's got to be bigger and it has to be better. And so we go twice a year on a staff retreat, and this is a lot of fun. It's where we kind of bond with the team. We need to do that very quickly because we have a team, of course, every 6 months, a new half team. So part of his job and something he relished, and which I didn't relish, was what he called the crazy adventures. See, there's an ex-intern right there nodding her head. She knows. And young men need adventure, and they need risk. So he would do things. He would take them out at midnight, and they would go onto the ski hills and where you weren't really supposed to be, and take them through the woods. And sometimes the snow, the guys who were grooming the hills in the nights, they would see them and be chasing them, and they'd be running through the woods. And so, every year I'd say to him, something, if you end up in the jail at night, don't call me till the morning, okay? And so finally, this all culminated in one evening where he and now the intern boys decide they've been out and it's been a very boring night. They haven't been chased by anybody, and so they decide we're going to go swimming in the hotel pool, which of course is closed. It's dark, and they don't have authorization to be there, and so they do that. They didn't bring their bathing suits.
We weren't staying at the hotel.
We weren't there.
No.
We had no idea. You understand?
No.
So, please. Well, of course. So what happens is, of course, security finds out, and there's this mad scramble, and the scramble is for some of them without some of their clothes, if you understand what I'm saying.
Most of their clothes.
And so half of them go running down the road only to be stopped by a policewoman. And of course she is listening to this story, and she says, now to the leader, who's this guy, now who are you? And he says, I'm the pastor. And she thought that was so outlandish that she just let them go, and they didn't have to spend the night in jail. But so he kind of toned it down. But I say all that to say that having interns can be the most, or one of the most joyous, bizarre, amazing, heart-filling things that you can do. Our lives, I would say, we've had probably over 120 interns in our career, and most of them have been in this place. And you not only give, but they give back to you, and they give back to you joy and surprise and new situations, and it's really something that's I think is one of the best things in the world. And I don't know if I just said this, but I've been thinking it for the last little bit, but everything that Mark said about raising new leaders is absolutely right on the money. Yeah. And we're going to talk about this probably from a little different perspective. Yeah. Do you want to throw something in here? We're sort of tag teaming, which we don't normally do.
No, we don't, but I think we can.
We can.
Okay.
We can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
I think one of the main points which Steve kind of provoked this thought as we had our parking lot discussion, but is just defining what it means to have an intern. Because I think in our hearts, most of us, and at least all of you in here, have that concept of raising up other people is a really good concept. But often we don't define it, so we just kind of do this very loose, unstructured thing, and it leaves a lot of gaps. So we actually have defined it. This year we've put down on paper, which I wouldn't say has been our natural strength, but put down on paper like an intern manual. Here's some definition, here's some policy, here's some of the parameters of the way that this is going to work and make it run well, and we can adjust it all the time as we go on. But basically the way we've defined it is to enable, we say graduates. We ask that every intern has gone through one of our schools. So I would recommend that for you. We used to take volunteers here, just people that we had never met or known before, and it often did not go well because they didn't have the same values. They had some heart wounding. So we say go through a school. It could be our school, it could be Ira's school, it could be Bethel, it could be, go through something where you're going to catch some vision and values. So enable graduates to continue to grow in a hands-on placement environment that encourages leadership training, practical experience, personal growth, and spiritual growth. Okay, so it's trying to cover all those elements, which is a big task if you actually think about it. Don't you wish someone was doing that for you? Giving you hands-on experience so you could cover A, B, and C, and D? It'd be kind of nice. But anyway, that's the idea of what the internship's goal is.
Yeah, I was looking at what an intern is. I always like to find the definition, and the dictionary said this: a student or recent graduate undergoing supervised practical training, which I thought was great. And then I read on where it says to confine someone as a prisoner, especially for political or military reasons. And I'm not sure what to say about that, but
any interns
it's not the kind of
have
internship
opinions?
anybody wants.
Yeah.
Is that one. As I said, having interns is really a great joy. One of the things that I think as a potential mentor, father, however you want to term that, is that I think from our perspective, we're always thinking about what is it that I want? What is it that I expect? And in fact, it's just as important to figure out what is it the intern expects. Because that in itself is a viewpoint we need to have. Because this is a partnership. This is a family. They give up some things. Doesn't matter whether they're 18, whether they have a job or not a job or whatever. They actually have to give up something, even if it's just time in the workforce. They have to give up something to come and be with you. So it's important to ask that question, what is it they're looking for, and to value the answers to those things. And mostly, of course, we traditionally think of this as being training. But there's kind of a subtext. Even, I suppose if you're going to work in the White House, you only think about experience, training, and how's this going to look on my resume. But I think for all of us and for all of the people who come to be with us, the subcontext is relationship. Yeah. And if you don't have that, if it's not good, the relationship you have between the two of you, you really sabotage the internship. It just doesn't really go that well. And of course, where there is relationship, everybody wins, So I was asking this question, what makes an internship successful? And the immediate answer is, well, when both sides have their expectancies met. where your expectations of the thing are both met or succeeded. But it's not just the goal, okay, so I've gotten a bunch of work done through my intern, and so that's really good, or whatever it is on the other side, because it's the process as well. Because you can have an amazing intern who is, brilliant, smart, efficient, can juggle babies over hot fires while blindfolded, but it can be a royal pain. And it's not a success if it's like that. So it's not just about the end goal, it's also about the process and how that process works. It's not just about getting to heaven, it's also how you live on the way to heaven kind of thing. And so you want it to be a serious success. So here's a number of things I've said that make an internship successful. And you'll hear language similar to what Mark was saying earlier. Because our perspective is really, we got a bunch of stuff that we need to do, and we need it to get done because we can't do it by ourselves. But the other flip side of that perspective is we want for them to be released into what they're built for. We want the dreams that God has put into them and the destiny that God has in them to start to be unlocked. And so we're constantly trying to balance those two things, and usually it's actually not that difficult. Because when you focus on the one, the other tends to get done. And if it doesn't, there tends to be some serious heart healing that has to happen in order to bring those things back into balance. So number one is you need clear expectations. This is something we're not very good at in church generally. Like, come on, it'll work out. Yeah, I just love you, come on. Come on, honey. But the problem is that once you get into it, then you end up being frustrated because you had something in your head, expectations, but they were a bit fuzzy anyway, and they had something in their head and it was fuzzy, and So for instance, there was one young lady who had an internship, and it just she was unhappy, and it just was not going well. And at the end of it, when we really got down to, well, what was it you were expecting? Well, I thought that I'd spend, maybe half my day with the pastor, and just talking about stuff. Oh, well, that's why it's not working. So you need to have clear expectations, and one of the ways that you do it is, did you want to talk about this? You were telling me earlier? That's the part.
Yes, have a job description for them. Now, that actually sounds a bit formal. I don't know how most of your ministries works, but we weren't hired with a job description, and I don't think most people were, but a job description actually gives them really safe parameters. It's like parenting. If you give your kids, here are the parameters that can go, it doesn't mean there's not some flexibility in those parameters, but it means that there are parameters, and it makes everyone feel safe. And you can always adjust those, revamp those, revisit them, review them, but it's really good to have that document. Here's your job description.
Yeah, there's a lot of practical things that can come into play. And of course, we're especially needing that because we have quite a large number. But in fact, we did have one school where we had a bunch of, we were partway through the school, and one of the kind of criticisms that came back to us from the interns was, what's the vision here for us? Now, of course, we had already said what the vision was, but sometimes in process, you have to learn they have to learn so many things quickly that gets lost. And so we're very intentional about, here's what you're here to do, and here's how you do it in general, and we'll help you with the specifics. Yeah. And it's been helpful for them over time. So you need clear vision, about roles and duties, expectations. But the second thing is you need clear boundaries. You need to lay out clear boundaries for each other. One of the things that's easy to slip into is to begin to use your interns as whatever you want. and to slip over into more of your personal life. So, you know, we've had situations where interns are used for, you know, cutting grass, babysitting, doing all the kind. I need you to run out to my dentist and pick, you know, all those kinds of things. And it's very difficult when you're 18, 19, 20 years old and you don't really know what this is supposed to look like to say to your boss, no. So there needs to be clear boundaries about what am I supposed to be doing and what's off limits.
Yeah, and I actually think if that is part of the internship, there's nothing wrong with that. If that's the invitation to come and be Gordon and my actual really personal assistant, where I need A, B, and C, and I tell you that up front, at least the intern has the opportunity to say, that's not what I want to do, or yes, that would be great. So it's really, really important that job description or the expectations are set up. Nobody gets hurt then. But you do see interns that get stuck babysitting for 12 hours a day when they thought they were going to be the worship pastor here because they were working with the worship leader.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And the flip side's true as well. Not that this will happen, but you need to make sure. You need to make sure that you don't communicate to your interns. You know what? You can call me every night at midnight, and you can arrive at my doorstep at 6 o'clock on Saturday or Sunday morning. It's fine, and just go into my fridge. Now, most of them won't do that, but you know, sometimes when we begin, you just, out of the goodness of your heart, you're just like, you know, just to take everything, you can come anytime you want, and if that's what you want, that's great. But you have to make sure that there are some boundaries for your health and for their health as well. This third one is going to be obvious, which is having a good attitude and having some hard work. Because ultimately, you want to accomplish some things, don't you? Being an intern and having an intern is not all just sitting around drinking coffee, although, well, coffee's from the devil anyway, so. Oh, wait, did Mark say something different? I'm kidding. So it's important that you model, you know, hard work, and they also get to do hard work, and that there's good attitudes in the middle of it. It's not fun, and it should never be that, you know, you have to dance around your intern because they don't function before 10 o'clock. You know, that's not so great. So, you know, that's an issue that needs to kind of be addressed when you see it.
Our interns are considered staff, so we don't actually make a distinction like you're sub-staff. They're staff, they have staff badges, they're brought into the entire staff life, which I really like. I think trust is a big thing, again, on both sides, but interns want to be trusted. They want to be given something that's valuable, which doesn't mean that they don't do some grunt work, but we always try to give our interns work that is actual value and makes a difference in what they're doing. And also try to teach them that you're an extension of us. The risk of giving them jobs that could fall down is that they do fall down sometimes. But I think that's okay. I think we need to be prepared to take the responsibility of that thing fell through the cracks and now I'm going to eat that. But it gives you that opportunity to for them to grow, for them to have a go and grow and sometimes fail and miss it and sometimes get it. And we place huge trust, don't we, on our interns. We always say, you're an extension of our arms. And so actually our interns we're sending all around the world representing us. Most of the interns here go on missions trips, on events all over the place. So they're representing us. And I would say they all really stretch for that bar. I think they're proud in a good way to be representing, and they really hold that responsibility well, rather than us just being like, you're just here and not really part of the team.
Yeah. the fourth thing that I'd like to say has to do with communication. This is going to be a no-brainer, I suppose, but communication needs to be clear, and it needs to be positive. And I would say it also needs to, you need, in your communication, you need to communicate respect and value. I did a poll of interns a while ago, and one of the most important things that they said, the most frustrating thing that interns say, and this is not just in this place, but interns in other places as well, is that when there's communication that's lacking respect, both in content and in tone. And the thing that's a bit frightening is when you invite someone in to be part of your family, and in a way you are doing that, albeit with maybe some boundaries, but when you do that, they get to see you. And you can hide for a little while. You can hide in church, but you can't hide from your family. And so they're going to see really what you're made of, and in fact, that's the way it's supposed to work. Yep. There needs to be intimacy and vulnerability if they're really going to catch what you have, and also to see the things that they don't want as well. But the problem is that sometimes when our communication, not only with them, but with our families, our kids, are just ungodly, they see that. And so if it makes them uncomfortable when they see you interacting in ungodly ways with other people, but it really hurts them, not only when that happens, but when they get it. And we're in this position where, in fact, we get to hear that, because many of the interns here, well, all of them actually are ex-students at least. And so when things aren't going well, we hear it. We don't share that love around, of course, but we hear it, and sometimes, of course, it's not really justified, but sometimes it is. And they see things, and you know what that's like, especially as a young person. It's not happy. So it's important that whatever we communicate and how we live in our life, it doesn't have to be perfect, of course, but it needs to be transparent, and it needs to be with honor. And where we haven't done honor, then we need to do we need to do the right things. We need to exercise forgiveness and repentance and all of those things. We just need to live a godly life.
I actually love that opportunity to have some good godly conflict sometimes. And we had a situation in this school with our interns, and when the pressure's on, which happens at the school ministry, when there's a lot happening and a lot to get accomplished, and I think the pressure was on, and I think the cafe food had been particularly terrible that week. And believe me, food and everything else go hand in hand. So
especially for the boys who are working out.
For the boys.
Every day.
And so that would be my side tip, is make sure your interns are fed well, because they'll be a lot happier. But anyway, one of our interns, and again, we come from all different countries, so there's all different ways of articulating things, and this particular intern came with his computer, and it was good, because he said, I've thought it through, and I want to read this to you so that I articulate myself well, and it was this very direct, I don't like this, I don't think this is fair, blah, blah, blah. But, and you could feel the tension in the room, like everyone what's going to happen? And, all eyes are on us. How is this going to go? Because everybody has different parenting experiences. And again, it's like being a parent. And so of course, the first feeling you can feel is sort of, I want to defend myself, right? It's usually the first feeling we feel when somebody kind of comes at us. But it's just like, down defense, Holy Spirit, come in. And anyway, it was brilliant, because we ended up having this great discussion around the table, and one of my primary goals would be to be solution orientated rather than just heavy-handed, that's the way it is, too bad, or any other way, is to look for solutions together. Because
she uses this on me all the time too. So.
Be solution orientated, but it gives, I think, a really godly model of working through some conflict, not retreating, everyone staying in together, and everyone in the group brings some kind of solution and adjustment together. So I like those times. So, you know, we always tell all the students, any school we're in, when you have a really big reaction to something, your intern or your intern's having a really big reaction, if whoever's reaction it is about them. My big reaction is about me. Somebody has poked something, or if the intern is really reacting, there's something prodding in then. So you don't always have to hit it head to head. But I think if we have a year to model and show some good godly leadership and working through things, I think it's a huge gift, because at least 50% of young adults haven't had that in their home. So I love that.
Yeah, it's really important. I would say a couple things just under the, proper communication, honor, respect. And one of them is we try, and I've heard other people talk about this, but I think a lot of times our natural reaction when things don't go well is to be irritated and frustrated. But what we try to do is we actually try to come from the perspective of, well, what is it that God is wanting to accomplish in them? What is it that God is doing here? Mm-hmm. Who are they as valued sons and daughters? And that changes the dynamic immensely. And it calls them into something, gives them responsibility for moving into something, as opposed to, oh, you're mad at me, kind of thing. And nobody appreciates that. Of course, not at all. But also as part of that listening, I was just talking to some of them the other day, and one of the big things was, I want to be heard. I want to belong. I want to be part of the team. And so how does that happen? Well, you listen. You ask, what do you think about this? What's important to you? Those kinds of things. And it's important not only to communicate those things to them, but you actually find there's some amazing ideas that come back, some things you haven't thought about, because we only have certain perspectives. We love having interns, and I wouldn't change it. I would encourage you, if you're thinking. How many of you are actually thinking, I think I'd like an intern? Cool. We have some of our former interns here.
Wow.
They're
Quite a few.
Another thing is giving them responsibility. You said some of this, but giving them responsibility, things that actually matter, and things that matter to them. The trust issue is important, but along with that, there needs to be support. So when they do really well, you want to encourage them. That was fantastic. You did great. Because, in fact, they did great. But when things don't go that well, you want to still encourage them, not lie to them. Like, oh, that was great. Oh, that was the worst thing I've ever seen. You don't want to do that. You want to encourage them, but you want to support them, help them to see their way through to the next place, all of those kinds of things. I remember just as a teenager driving the car for the first time. And I remember, my dad could be quite angry sometimes, and I didn't enjoy that very much. But one day, I backed the car into a tree. That's not the best thing. And it really crumpled the back of the tree. And without thinking, I called where my parents were, and I asked for my dad, not my mom. Because I knew instinctively that how he would react would be the right way. I wasn't afraid of it, because I knew he would react as anybody hurt. No, you're okay? Good? Well, we'll just get it fixed. Oh, okay. And, we've had that experience as well. At one time, we were going to rent some vehicles, and so, of course, we had to drive over, and one of the small group leaders backing up just, kind of crunched her mama's car and was upset. And I remembered that passed down from father to son. Nobody got hurt. It's just cars. It's just money. It's okay. And that helped. So that's what you do with oh, so nice.
Oh, we're missing a birthday party.
Is that you want to respond to them in the worst situations in the best possible way. And of course, we're all humans. We don't always do that, but.
Let me just talk for a minute about that. We are really big on giving feedback. You can't change if you don't have feedback because you don't really have a sense of where you are. So this is part of why we've made the internship manual. So it gives the people having an internship, they know what's expected of them and what they're supposed to be doing, and it lets the intern know what they're doing. So feedback is a big part of that, and I think it's been a really positive thing that we've implemented. And so we meet every few months. So particularly with our small group leaders, we would meet them when they're in their outreach team. So we meet them as team leaders. Basic questions: what's going well, what's not going well. We always meet them at a 6-month point, one-on-one, in their year of internship, and give feedback. And it's an amazing time because you can, again, it depends. If you have relationship, you can say a lot to each other. And if there's no relationship and it's just, here's what you're doing wrong, that's what most people hear, right? They only hear from you when they hear what you're doing wrong. But that's not the nicest. You want to hear, actually, what am I doing well? So we try to say, here's where you're doing well, here's where we really see you've grown, and here's where we're looking for you to grow. If we see something along the way, we'll just pull interns in one by one. Generally, I don't ever remember that really not going well. Sometimes it's a bit painful if it's something direct. What we mostly deal with here is girls and boys, so our interns are not allowed to date. Now this is another subject that you have to decide for yourself, but our interns are primarily living in our building, and it's just really close quarters, and you have one breakup in there and it's disastrous. So
we've had this experience.
We have had this experience. So our interns are not allowed to date if they're living on site. And so a lot of the things that we deal with are related to girls or related to boys. But it's amazing to me how you can even challenge that and get with them and talk with them about it and envision them. And the response that you get is generally really fantastic.
Yeah, it's really good. I'm going to quote a couple interns actually, as someone said to me yesterday, and they work on Ben Jackson's team, who's in the creative department. They said, Ben asked me to do a project and arrange a meeting with the steps and what to do laid out. I was unsure whether to do the meeting, as I wasn't sure I was prepared enough, but Ben supported me with reasons to go ahead. The advice in that situation is probably going to be applicable and helpful in the future, and doing the project helped build my confidence. So there was a supervisor who gave a job a little bit outside of the person's expertise and comfort zone, but helped with the process of walking through it, not only steps, concrete steps, but also with the emotional encouragement and belief in them, trust, that moved them to a new place. And that's ultimately the kind of action that we should be taking. Another person just said this: I think when the person in charge of the internship is able to invest in the intern, to connect with them and guide them, it's a successful triumph. It was amazing when I did the poll how many of them said the same things over and over again. Yeah. And so you really, as an internship, a person leading an internship, you can't be their mother and father, because you're not, actually. Yeah. And we personally refrain from actually using that spiritual mother and father language, although in some ways that's what we are. Mm-hmm. But you want to take them for whatever amount of input they'll let you have, mm-hmm. and propel them. Believe in them, propel them forward. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying I'm the best model of a person doing that. I'm quite aware of my own limitations, but when I look at some of the interns that we've had, I'm so proud of them. Yeah.
Oh, give yourself a hand.
They're amazing. And we get to see them, Kirsten over here is a youth pastor, and of course pastoring.
How come
and
you're
his wife,
sitting
both
apart,
of them,
though,
yeah.
husband and wife? What? You're having a fight.
Right,
oh.
Well, we need to have another talk. But they're youth pastors and have gone through the fire a little bit where they were for a little bit of time.
The other kind of fire.
Yeah, not that kind of fire. They had that kind of. Well, they still. Never mind. They've done amazingly well, and I think that generally happens when you really invest in somebody, and to see that just is incredible.
Well, one of the ways we invest in interns is, and actually this is quite a common question we get, is what's the financial arrangement for interns? And it can be the gamut. We try to just give people, well, these are the parameters that we've seen and you have to decide for yourself. I think accommodation is the biggest item I would try to provide, because it's quite hard for somebody to come for a year and rent an apartment, or so I think if you can work out housing for them, that's the best thing. I would say if you give them a room in your house or in the somebody's house, make that their room. Don't make it your spare closet with all your storage and everything in it, so you're constantly in and out of the room. If it's a room, I would try to actually give them that room so it's theirs. Just gives them a little corner space for themselves. But it runs wide. I mean, I knew one ministry that you would travel somewhat with the leader, and they charged $25,000 US for 6 months. That's what the internship cost. It did include some trips. That was an expensive internship. And then there's the internships that will pay you. I know there's a government internship in Canada right now that pays $1,700 a month. So there's internships like that. But generally, I would say the way they work is provide some food, some housing, and some pocket money. That's here we don't provide pocket money, but we provide food, housing, and we help the interns, write letters for donations, and any donations that come into the school ministry, we divide it out between our interns. So sometimes it's quite funny. It's like, guys, $11 for each of you. But you know what? It's amazing. They are so happy to have that $11. And I've not seen an intern. Sometimes some have more than others, and you see them, oh, it's okay, I've got money, I'll share it out with you. It's really, really lovely. So, but I was going to say, why did I start talking about the cost? I don't remember. How much does it cost? Oh, how much is... Well, it depends. So, if you have someone living in your house, it costs you feeding them somewhat. But it can really look whatever you want. Some interns have a part-time job, and then they intern for you part-time. So the cost can be nothing. Some people are making money off of their interns. But I always think it's good you want to invest into them, and it's not bad if they invest into you. Our interns, when we used to give them pocket money, had to pay part of their outreach ticket. The idea was they would pay 50% of it. When we remove the pocket money, we pay for their outreach expenses. So it hopefully sort of evens out. I still didn't remember why I started talking about costs, but it'll come back to me.
I don't remember either. What else did you want to talk about? I'm sort of the idea, sort of like, here philosophically is how internships should work.
I just remembered why I was going to talk about. What we try to do is give them training. So that can look very varied. I know if an intern is working in the creative services team, then they might be sent to a course on PowerPoint or something to do with that. If you work in kids ministry, you might go on a children's conference. So we always try to have training accessible to them. Now, not 10 events a year, but every 6 months a year. In the School of Ministry, every week we have training with our team. So they're preparing to go on outreach. So, for example, we have training on budgeting. Didn't you wish someone taught you how to do a budget? These guys, right guys? By the time they're done, school ministry, internship, they can budget actually quite a lot of money. Some of them are going out with as much as $10,000 on their trip. So it's not just, $200 that they're trying to look after. It's a lot of money. And we do how to MC a meeting. We do how to resolve conflict. We talk about how to communicate. Because a lot of people have never learned that. How do you send a proper letter to somebody? How do you set up an event? What else do we teach them about?
How to live a life outside of ministry.
How to live a life outside of ministry. How to manage your time is a big one. I make all my interns have some form of timekeeping thing. It can be your phone, it can be your computer, it can be an agenda, day timer, whatever you call it. And so they all mock me for it, but they love it underneath.
Years later, they come back and say, look, I got my day timer.
Like, yes. Yeah. So training, I think training is wonderful. I think as much training that you can give them. Again, we do training. We do a lot of what we call debriefing. So again, how's it going? What went well? What could work better? And I think they love that. I think they love being part of that process, and I think it helps us constantly adjust things, and it helps us help them. Okay, very good question. So is a work permit or a study permit required? It depends what country you're from. So in Canada, what we did is we went over to Canadian immigration at the airport, and we sat down with them and said, this is what we want to do, how do we do it? So Canada has extended to us what's called a 1-year visitor's visa. Canada is quite easy because there's a 6-month visitor's visa anyway, and I believe in Europe many countries have that. Norway does not have that. You have a 3-month. So it's either usually 3 months or 6 months. New Zealand is really friendly as well. They like people for a long time. But Germany, 6 months as well. So if you have 6 months, it's quite easy to get that 6 months and then apply for an extension for 6 months, or work out something like we did where they allowed us to have a 1-year visitor's visa. In the U.S. right now, it's really difficult to send interns to the U.S. because since 9/11, they've just shut down the religious workers visa. Anyone here from the U.S.? Yeah, it's quite difficult. You as a church have to petition Homeland Security to get approved as a church to be able to even invite an intern, and it's about, with lawyers, it's a big process. So we haven't quite figured out a way around that yet.
And the thing is, I don't think it's any different anywhere, but even getting that kind of visa in order to be an intern doesn't allow you to work for money anywhere. If you belong to that country, yeah.
Yes.
But if you're from another country, I don't know, and there probably are some places, but I don't know any places that allow you to work.
Yes, if you get a religious workers visa, you are allowed to make money from that organization. If you have a school like we have, you're technically allowed to make money on campus. But we really don't do that very much because there's so many interns here. You don't want to flag that, like, why are all these people making money? But they could make a little bit of money, like if they helped out at a banquet or something, they could get $25 or just a little money, or you could give them a grocery card, something like that. You have to know the charitable status of your country because there's quite strong parameters so that the charity does not lose their status. But there's ways that the government will say it's appropriate to do it this way. And pocket money, housing, and food are all under those parameters. Is there another question? Yes. Yeah, if you're going to offer them any kind of payment, they would do it. The thing that we find is, again, they're all about relationship. So the more they know someone, the more it's going to be easier to have an intern. Often, a lot of the students we get are really young, and when they're 18, I don't know, for some reason it's hard for them to just make a decision. Sometimes I wish I could just assign, say, you're going here, and you're going here, and you're going here, and have a go for a year. But yes, you can send to us kind of like a little job description, and then we post it, and then what we say, so this would be another tip, get references. It's really important. We will give you a really straight up reference of the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because again, if you know what some of the good things are and some of the not so good things, you can know if you can work with that or not. Culturally, it's quite important. We had a girl go to the UK, and you'd think Canada and the UK is the same, but it's miles apart. Like, it's amazing the offense that kind of took place without anybody really knowing, and they did not get a reference for that girl, and it didn't go well. So get references. Yes. Okay, what kind of a screening process do we use? We pretty much only take our graduates, and so we already know them.
And so if another department is going to take somebody on as an intern, they'll come and talk to us. Generally, that's what they do.
Yeah.
But I would say, outside of that kind of thing, I mean, coming through our school, as awesome as it is not a guarantee.
No.
Because sometimes the students just slump their way through, like any place. So it's good to have somebody who can give a reference, like a pastor or whatever, who actually will be honest with you about here's the strengths, here's the weakness of this person, and then you can make a call on that. Of course, it's easier if you know them or you have some sort of interview, but that's not always easy to do.
But we treat it like a job. We have in the intern manual, we have an application process, we have references, we have an interview, and so we present it like a job. This would be your job for the year, and which means you can be hired, you can be fired, you can be on probation. Although all our interns start on a 3-month probation. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In general, that's a good
good.
idea. Although that doesn't always work, depending on because one of the things that happens with us is a lot of times pastors won't give a reference or a good reference because they may not like the fact that the person is coming here because they don't like us, don't like what we stand for. So,
yeah, I get both.
You have to kind of make a call on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But in general, that's what you want to do. Somebody who really knows them.
Yeah. Our internship manual is going to, so the question is the internship manual available? It's going to be available through the Resource Center. One of the best things it has in it, apart from it's been years of what we've learned, is that it has a lot of the documents in the back that you need for legalities. And, it's legal stuff is annoying in the church. I just think we all wish it would go away, but it's not going away. In Canada is not as legal as the U.S. has been, but in charities, the government is really, it's funny, we have a born-again Christian leader. This is a bit of a side point, but 43% of our government leaders are Christians right now in government. It's amazing. But the charities, because there's been not good stuff in charities, are under quite a bit of scrutiny, and there's a case recently of some youth going on a youth trip, and there were some drivers, and there was a really bad accident, and the whole car full of youth were killed in the car accident. And the church was in the process of being incorporated, so they weren't fully incorporated. And the top guy down to the eldest 18-year-old, youngest 18-year-old is being sued for $18 million. And so the legal actual stress on us at the moment is very, very high because we're under scrutiny anyway, but we have these great documents in the back here that unfortunately you need, and it could be something that you could jump off and just tailor it to fit you. So they're included in it. We have the application in here. We have, you know, an example of a support letter that people could write. One of the most beautiful things that I see with our interns is we have past small group leaders that send donations to the current small group leaders. I think that makes me happy. Yeah. Yes. It's going to be available in the bookstore. So what you could do is, if you want, just you can just sign up in there for it, and then we'll get that to you. So right now it's not, but it's going to be available in there.
It's pretty much put together, but just needs a little print job. So, other questions? Yeah. Sure. How do you screen people? Do you take them through training? Yeah, what do you do when they don't want to do? Yeah, I mean, it depends what you're able to, like on the first question in terms of, you know, screening. What's that? Yeah, okay, so the first question was how do you screen people? That was the first question, right? When you're in a faraway land, as in Mozambique. You know, again, you can have the written things, pastors' references, get them to talk about themselves on paper. Of course, you can do a phone interview or Skype interview or something like that. It's somewhat limited. You kind of have to depend upon your godly tuned, you know, senses and what someone else writes to you.
Yeah, some people have said, I want you to go to a school. Like I know Ivan and Isabel, who are teaching in our school, are going to take an intern from the UK, and they said, we want you to go through school ministry first and then come, or we want you to go through Iris school, or we want you to do something, or it's through some connection that you know and have some relationship with, and you can take them. In terms of the other question, what happens basically when you have conflict and they're not doing what you ask? I think if it's been like a job presentation and you have a probationary period, and sometimes you can, you know, I think sometimes you send people home. We have sent small group leaders home before. It's pretty brutal in our team, but we have done it before. We've also not done it when we should have done it, just because we were a bit chicken. And
so we're talking like 2%.
Yeah, very
so
very
2
small.
out of 120 sort of thing, but
yeah, very small.
happens.
But I think you're always trying to resolve what's actually going on under the surface clash. What's actually happening underneath.
Yeah, you want to give them a fair go. Just like you do really in a job, actually, you want to, okay, this isn't working, here's how it's not working, let's try and work through this. But there comes a period of time where it's not working. It's either they're not at the place and may never be at the place, or they're in the wrong fit, or something like that. And so what's actually most beneficial is to hug them, kiss them, and tell them you love them, and then say goodbye.
Yeah, I know at Iris one of the most difficult...
And cry then afterwards, but yeah.
One of the most difficult things must be, I've heard it when I've arrived at an Iris base, is everyone's like, where's Heidi? And you're like, guys, it's not about Heidi, it's the kids and what we can do. And I think it must be disheartening sometimes, but I know, and you can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but that there's a requirement that you come in for 1 month first if you're going to be a long-term missions. Is that correct? You have to do the school of ministry. So there it's the same. You have to do the school of ministry and the school of ministry mission, sorry. But before that, I believe, at least at the Maputo base, you had to come for a month and then go home and then reapply to come back, which isn't a bad idea because it gives everybody a chance to realize Heidi's not there, it rains a lot here, and the beach is far away. No. You know,
and
I
you
don't
get
know.
to see them. You get to see
Yeah.
them. Okay.
Yeah.
They're really not going to be able to live in this circumstance, or wow,
That's
they're really
right.
good.
So important anytime you're really changing culture, which I say between us and the UK, it's changing culture. It's not just going to Africa. Those are very good questions.
Yeah. In our heart of hearts, we really think, 35, 40 hours a week. Give them 2 days off. And not like, an afternoon, but they're working in the morning of one day, another full day, and then another half day. Because in some ways, that's not really a full day off. It's time off, but it's not really a day off. That's sort of ideal. But you really want to honor them with them. One of the biggest frustrations is when they start to feel like, you know what, I'm giving so much, and I'm, burnt out, but I'm not getting anything, or I'm not getting much back from the people who are supposed to be mentoring me. So it's important to kind of communicate, this is, what you're doing is important, but you also have other things in your life besides the work you're doing for us. I think we all kind of recognize we have sprinter mode, and then we have long distance mode, and we can sprint a lot. Some of us are much better sprinters, but there comes a point in life where we're just say, you know what, I can't do that anymore. And if I keep doing that, I'm going to die. Why teach our people to sprint and burn themselves out? Why not teach them how to run long? And that's hard in places like church, because there's always more to do. And the job is sometimes so ill-defined that there's always more, and it always has to get done, and.
And this is, I would pick other people's brains on this, because this is probably the main area where we have the most disagreement about. I think, and so Steve Long would be a great example. He and I kind of hash out this quite a bit, but there's if it's a pastoral intern, there's learning the life of a pastor. And of course, I have been for a long time a pastor, and I agree that it's not my job, and it's so tightly compartmentalized that I'm here at work today and now I'm no longer. I'm one person. I'm here, there, and everywhere the same, and I believe that, and I live like that. And at the school, if somebody calls at midnight that somebody broke their head open, of course we're not going to be like, oops, it's 10 after 6, I'm not going. So we don't live like that at all. We live very much. But we also are vivaciously enthusiastic about time off. I want to know that Gordon and I can have a content day outside of ministry. I don't see that in a lot of pastors. And so my argument would be, when we look at pastors, do we see them overworking or underworking? I think typically we see them overworking, just always doing ministry. And so I want to teach my interns, you have days off, and I want you to learn to be content in those days off, especially when you don't have a lot of money. You know what? You have to learn a higher contentment when you have less money. Because if you have a lot of money, then you use your money to kind of fill that. And so actually, our small group leaders, it's kind of funny because we're valiant about 2 days off, but our small group leaders do not get 2 days off. What they get is Saturday and Monday morning, but they have a lot more flexibility in their week. So if they want to go do something at 3, they can do it. So they have a very structured day and a half off, and then lots of flexibility. But if your intern is expected to be in the office 9 to 5, then I would say then they need to, have some other. The other aspect is volunteer time. So Steve, which is really good, I love this about him, he says Sunday morning is my volunteer time to the church. It's not the work day, because that's what all of you are being asked to do, or all of the church is being asked to do, which is a very cool point. Something to think about. I'll leave it right there.
It's obviously something you have to work out and put that as part of the expectations, I think.
Does that help? Yeah.
Yeah. I can tell you immediately what I love. The thing that I love is I love the life change that happens as they are as they more deeply connect with God and their hearts get healed. If I talk about it too much, I'll start crying, because it fills me up inside to watch them just do this, to become more of the people they actually are, and to see that coming out and spilling out into the world. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's just stunning. It's my favorite part too, for sure. The worst part is saying goodbye. Oof. We just have our heart torn out every 6 months.
Which is the only reason to have a heart of stone and to not get rid of that is just to, no.
That's right. So, yes, Wes.
Yes. Yeah. There's a couple things. One is of course an exit interview, because you want to value what their experience has been. But I would say that all along, I would say none of our interns want to stay. I'm not sure what that says, but by the time that they have been in school for 6 months and then another year as an intern, they have started to dream about what am I going to do next? Yeah. Here's what I think I'm going to do. Most of them are like that, and they're ready to go. Yeah. So I think as a part of building into them, what is your dreams? What is it you love? What's God have for you next? Kind of thing. I mean, you don't want to do the what's next too early, because then they're gone in their mind. But as you build that sense, then the next step isn't so bad. And I think one of the advantages is, although the world is very, very big, you can connect with them on Skype or whatever if you want to. And we do end up talking to quite a few of them. A lot of them come and see us, and we get invited to weddings, and just a great joy.
I think that's the best thing, is to try to help them have a plan and brainstorm with them and connect them and use your network resources to do that. We did a graduate reunion in the UK recently, and it was really inspiring, because we went around everybody. There were about 70 people there, and what are you doing? What are you doing? And you heard these great stories. The only ones who were suffering a bit were the 2 small group leaders who had just returned to the UK. Their community is here. They hadn't just quite found their their little slot yet. And you're just like, oh, I wish I could just fix that for you. But again, keeping in touch with them. So we would really be in touch with those guys. How are you doing? Where are you? Can I help connect something?
If you point them towards a prospective mate, they're not looking at you or the place anymore. They're ready to go.
Yes. Right, Kirsten? Right. Good, Steve. Yeah, the other Steve now. Yeah.
Probably the biggest thing that we do a weekly small group. So we do it not only in the school, but the boys will come and meet with me. Girls will come and meet with Cathy or Sarah. And, you might have something in your heart, but just as often as not, it's more about what's going on with you. And allowing a little vulnerability, transparency, it helps them. We actually, we used to put the boys, they usually have 4 or 5 boys, we used to separate them into 2 rooms. Not that you're going to do this, but a few schools ago, the school was so full that we had to put all 5 boys together, and I was resisting that. And at the end of that school, when, some of them were coming back, and I said, let's, we're going to put you in a couple different rooms. They were like, no, don't do that, because we're so together now. And every time now that we do that, they're all together. They love being together. Not always easy, but roommates. I mean, my roommate was my best man at, in college, my best man when I got married, and we have nothing in common. But it's because we live together. It builds community. So
yeah,
that's one idea.
Here they live together, so it's very easy to have community, I think. And they've come out of the school together. So, but I do know from other internships that, because one of my visions for internship that I think that maybe Paul spoke about, but is to have pods of internships. So, for example, Stratford that's where John and Patricia used to be, is a pod for internships. There's Bath in the UK. There's Catch the Fire UK. There's a few places that there's a gathering of interns, and what I would love to see is that those pods would filter to the churches in the area, so because it is expensive to have an intern, actually, or a few interns, but you could resource those out. So that's kind of an idea that I have, but those pods create great community because they're like each other, they've had similar experiences, they're on fire for God, and they egg that on typically. But one of the downsides I've heard of that is that they're sort of their own community, and then they don't connect with the church. So it's really important to have your interns connected with the church. I think that's what we have to work harder on is to connect interns into the church, so they're not their own little group of, not elite, but just their own little group unto themselves. So Stratford changed that after the first year. They were like, we got to change that. And so they intentionally said, you need to be part of a cell group in a church. We're gonna shift you out a little bit, and it worked quite well.
Yeah. So coming back again to what you were saying, I think a couple things really help. One is time together, consistent time together, where there's vulnerability. They each hear about each other's life. Because that helps you, actually. Yeah. When you hear someone else's life, you're drawn into their story, and you appreciate them then for who they are, rather than what they're not. And probably, as well, a common mission, not just like intellectually we have the same mission, but actually being sent on the same kind of tasks and the same missions together. Even if it's you're on dishwashing duty together for the next 3 months, it is going to be some conflict maybe, but that's part of the building of community.
And before we got here, they used to assign outreach leaders, so we always send a guy and a girl together, the ones that had conflict, so they could work out the conflict. We don't do that. That just created a month of terrible conflict, and we would be trying to resolve it on the phone. So we don't do that anymore. The main thing we look for when we join those teams is who doesn't like each other, and where do we think they're called to go. Yeah. So I was thinking of one more idea for community. I don't remember what it is.
Any other questions?
Any of the schools that are happening, I would say Iris, Bethel, IHOP, Catch the Fire School of Ministry. There's 5 School of Ministries now around the world. It's really cool because we met some pastors here who are from the Dominican Republic, and they were looking for a youth leader, and we knew this kid an
intern in South America.
Yeah, who had graduated from the School of Ministry in Brazil, spoke Spanish, connected them together, and he's just arrived. So that's my favorite thing to do, is network people together. It doesn't always work as fast and efficiently as I would like, but I always give it a go.
Yeah, and just on a kind of flip side, if you know people, young people especially, who want to do an internship somewhere, course, we all wish they would do it with us, but that's not the way it works. But if you do, you should try and find some great places where there is, they may just take them and mentor them. I know Rick Durazio at Freedom Center, he's amazing with his interns, just incredible. And there are others like that. So from that kind of flip side, if you want to get somebody into ministry and you can't kind of do it in your context, find a good place, safe place, encouraging place that can help in all of that.
Yes, one more. So we do. We have 5. So we have Norway, 6. We have Norway, we have Brazil, we have South Africa, we have England, we have Raleigh, North Carolina, and here. So, and Montreal is being planted next year in French, and we also have just launched Oroville, California, which is like a school for street ministry and raising up those that have been really in drug and alcohol abuse. So it's an amazing school. So our vision for it is to have more regional schools. So we never intended to have 2 in the U.S. or 2 in Canada, but both of those are regional by their mandate or by their language. So the one in Montreal will be specifically French and a French training school. So anybody who wants to go and learn French. And then to go into really the French regions of the world. So that's kind of what we're thinking. Let's see what happens. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, our original ideas were for the whole school ministry is that you would go back into your home church. But it doesn't work very well. And, Gordon and I have our own children, and they didn't come back here. So it's that part of life, When I graduated, I went to New Zealand and spent a year there. I think it's that time in life to go somewhere else. And I think the tension is to let our young adults go. And Gordon and I were talking about this in the car last night, and just... it does cause problems, especially if a pastor has sent someone and then they don't come back. If it's somebody that we know, like, let's say Kirsten over here is the worship leader at his church, and we know the pastor has sent him here, we would call and ask before we asked him. Sometimes we get an application, and like one time it was written in big bold letters, "Do not ask him as an intern." We were like, okay. Now, I may not agree with that personally, but that's the way that was just the way it was. And in South America, it's very strict like that. A pastor sends the student, and the student's expected to come back. I believe you sow, I sow, and we're all gaining. It's about them. It can't be about us. So, but yes, it does cause some friction, and we try to have as least friction by calling and talking. So sometimes we've called and asked, could we ask this person as an intern, and they say no, and we don't. It's a little bit hard, but yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now that we've heard Paul, we all love... No.
Yeah. Yeah, how do you split time between maybe the things that are exciting and passionate for them and, boy, the stuff you got to get done and you need somebody to do it? I don't know that there's a real rule. Just in my head, I think, 20%, 80%, something like that. That's just off the top of my head. We try to work this way even with our staff. We try to look at what are they passionate about, what are they gifted in, and so let's give them what is, but there's a whole other bunch of stuff that we have to divvy up amongst ourselves. Just has to get done. And of course, anybody who's a pastor knows 80% or 75% of what you do in a normal church, it's like, here I am in front of my computer, you know, maybe that's too much percentage, but there's a lot of stuff you have to do you don't want to do. And so it's true for all of us. But you have to give them enough that it's valuable for them, and they don't just feel like, oh, I'm just doing all the stuff nobody else wants to do.
Yeah, but a job description will help that because it lays it out, again, what you're expecting and what they're expecting.
Steve and Sandra are great at this. They'll take their interns, and within the first week or two, they're up here announcing people, giving talk. They won't necessarily talk at a conference, but they'll be doing some stuff that actually trains them how to be in front of people and has value, and they're really good at that.
And I think that's one of the things I love about our team. We work as a team, so it's not like, oh, you're the PA and the administrator. We all pretty much are all hands on deck because there's not that many of us at the school. And I think it's really true what Gordon says. When someone new comes in, the whole team shuffles. Yeah. It's like, oh, I gave away that part because I could a year ago, but now I need to take it back because their strength isn't in that area. But you see, so it's not just doing what you like, but it's doing what the person's strength is. Does that make sense? Sometimes it's different. You know, I don't like the telephone at all, but I can do it. And, you know, I'd much rather send an email, but but then there's some things that I'm really terrible at and will fall to the ground if I do it. So we constantly kind of juggle our team. And I think that's nice for the intern or the new staff member as well. Steve, again, did you have okay.
Over there.
So is there an expectation for them to have employment to help with their finances?
It's totally up to what you want, really.
Or they want.
The expectations of, you know, either come with all the money you need or whatever you want, really.
Yeah.
Because it's open. It's an open playing field, really. It's just that you need to know what are the expectations from both ends.
So, for example, I talked earlier about how we could kind of post a job posting. So on it, you could say, this is the role that we want. This is this is what we'll provide. This is what you need to provide. So if you were in the UK, you would say you need this much to live a month, or in Canada this month. You can work. We don't want you to work, so you need to come with that. You can spell it all out. The more you can spell it on the front end, the easier it would be. And my kind of counsel to you would be, don't overpromise. Sometimes there's a tendency to dangle a carrot because you want someone to come. But if you cannot deliver it, better to under-dangle and they get a surprise rather than over-dangle and then they're disappointed.
And sometimes that over-promising is almost never, I'm going to trick the person. It's always intentional. I intend to make this happen or carry through, and then you know what I mean?
If we're influencers, we have to resist the temptation. Okay.
Are you good? Let me pray over you guys, if you don't mind. Lord, I pray that wherever there's a desire in the hearts here for an intern, I ask that everything that's needed arises. The finances, the housing, all the mechanics, Lord, and I pray that the right person or right persons will arrive supernaturally in front of them. And Lord, that there will be a godly click, a godly relationship that just blossoms into the joy that you intend for interns and mentors, Lord, protégés, fathers and sons and daughters. Lord, let this joy, let this grace be upon each one here who wants to have an intern. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you for hanging out with us for the last hour and a half. Go and be filled.